The dream that almost was. Life doesn't prepare you for loss. It doesn't give you a handbook on how to handle grief, how to keep breathing when the weight of pain feels too heavy, how to move forward when every step feels like walking through quicksand. It's something you only understand when you've lived through it, when you've had to watch something precious slip through your fingers with nothing you can do to stop it. For Angel Carter, motherhood wasn't just a desire, it was a calling. Ever since she was a little girl, she had imagined the moment she would cradle her own child in her arms, whispering soft lullabies in the quiet of the night. Growing up as an only child in a house filled with silence, she had promised herself that one day her home would be different. It would be filled with love, laughter, and the warmth of a family that never had to question how much they meant to one another. When she married Nick, she felt like she had taken the first step toward that dream. Nick was her anchor, practical, steady, the kind of man who planned everything down to the smallest detail. A software engineer by trade, he believed in logic and reason, in solutions and strategies. He didn't believe in fate or destiny, but when they saw those two tiny heartbeats flickering on the ultrasound screen, even he couldn't deny that something special was happening. Twins, Angel had whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and awe. Nick had squeezed her hand, his usual cool composure cracking just enough for her to see the joy in his eyes. "We're having twins." The moment felt surreal, like a dream too beautiful to be real. They had always talked about having children, but twins, that was something neither of them had expected. Yet, in that instant, Angel felt as though life was finally giving her the family she had longed for. The universe had answered her prayers. She named them right then and there, Blake and Annabelle. Two tiny souls growing inside her, two perfect little beings that would change their world forever. The pregnancy started off smoothly, though the first trimester wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit her hard, leaving her exhausted and unable to keep much food down. But she didn't complain. Every wave of nausea, every sleepless night was a reminder that her babies were there, growing, thriving. Nick, ever the problem solver, kept track of every milestone in a neatly organized pregnancy journal. He recorded her cravings, their late-night talks about baby names, and the way she would place his hand on her belly, trying to get him to feel the first tiny flutters of movement. "We're going to be amazing parents," Angel had said one night as they lay in bed, her fingers tracing slow circles over her stomach. Nick had smiled, but there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite place, a shadow of worry, a flicker of doubt. "You know I love you, right?" he murmured, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Of course," she whispered. "What's wrong?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, with a sigh, he said, I can't stop thinking about what happened when my sister was born." Angel knew the story. When Nick was 6 years old, his mother had nearly died giving birth to his younger sister. Complications had led to an emergency surgery, and for days, the doctors weren't sure she would survive. The fear of losing her had left a permanent scar on Nick's heart, a wound that had never truly healed. "You're not your mother," Angel reassured him. "And I'm not her. We're going to be fine. The babies are going to be fine." He nodded, but deep down, she knew the fear never truly left him. At 20 weeks, everything changed. It was supposed to be a routine checkup, just another ultrasound to see how the twins were developing. Angel had been excited, eager to see how much they had grown since their last visit. But as the technician moved the probe over her stomach, a frown crept onto her face. "Is something wrong?" Angel asked, a tight knot forming in her chest. The technician hesitated before saying, "I'm going to call the doctor in." Angel's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She glanced at Nick, whose jaw had tightened, his fingers gripping hers just a little too hard. Dr. Patel, the head of maternal-fetal medicine, entered the room a few minutes later, his expression unreadable. He took over the scan, moving in slow, deliberate motions. Then, with a measured breath, he looked at them and said, "Angel, we need to talk about your cervix." Her cervix? That wasn't something she had ever thought about. What about it? It's measuring shorter than it should be at this stage of pregnancy. That puts you at risk for preterm labor. The words hit her like a physical blow. What does that mean for the babies? Dr. Patel sighed. We need to monitor you closely. You'll have to take it easy. No strenuous activity. No lifting. No unnecessary stress. If it gets worse, we may need to put you on bed rest. Bed rest. That wasn't part of the plan. She had planned on decorating the nursery, taking maternity photos, experiencing every joy of pregnancy. But now, everything felt uncertain. Nick was the one who asked the question that was burning in her mind. How serious is this? The doctor hesitated. We've seen cases where women with a shortened cervix go on to have full-term pregnancies, but there's also a risk of preterm labor, if that happens too early. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Angel understood. From that moment on, everything changed. She followed every instruction to the letter. She stopped working, stopped moving too much, let Nick handle everything. But the fear never left her. Every cramp, every ache made her panic. Every time she felt the slightest discomfort, she held her breath, praying it wasn't the beginning of something worse. And then, at 22 weeks, it happened. A sharp pain deep in her belly. A rush of warmth between her legs. She didn't need to look to know what it was. Blood. Nick found her in the bathroom, shaking, whispering the same words over and over again. It's too soon. It's too soon. They rushed to the hospital. Doctors worked quickly, administering medication to try to stop the contractions. Hours passed in a haze of fear and desperation. She prayed. She begged. But some things are beyond human control. Blake was born first. Too small, too fragile. He took only a few breaths before slipping away, before Angel even had the chance to hold him. Annabelle came next. Stronger, they said. They rushed her to the NICU, fighting to keep her alive. For 4 days, Angel and Nick sat by her incubator, whispering to her, willing her to hold on. But on the 4th night, the doctors found a hole in her bowel. A complication. An infection. An emergency surgery that didn't work. The doctor sat them down. She's in pain, he said gently. There's nothing more we can do. Angel felt the world tilt. No, she whispered. You have to save her. But there was no saving her. So Angel held her daughter in her arms for the first and last time, rocking her gently as she took her final breath. Nick collapsed in the hallway, sobbing. Their dream of parenthood had ended in silence and empty arms. And Angel, who had always believed in love and hope and fate, suddenly found herself drowning in a darkness she didn't know how to escape. Drowning in the quiet. There are moments in life that fracture you, breaking you into pieces so small you wonder if you'll ever be whole again. Losing one child is unbearable. Losing two, losing both of them before they even had a chance to live, is something that defies understanding. It's the kind of pain that turns the world cold, that makes time feel meaningless, that steals the air from your lungs and leaves you gasping in the silence. For Angel Carter, the silence was the worst part. After Blake and Annabelle were gone, everything around her felt empty, hollow. It was as if their home had turned into an echo chamber of what could have been. The nursery, which had once been a place of excitement and dreams, now stood as a cruel reminder of everything they had lost. The walls were painted a soft shade of blue, Blake's color. A delicate mobile of white stars hung above the crib. Annabelle's crib. Tiny outfits, folded neatly in drawers, would never be worn. A rocking chair sat in the corner, waiting for lullabies that would never be sung. Angel refused to go inside. Nick had tried. Once. He had walked into the nursery with the intention of packing everything away, of making it hurt a little less. He had lasted 10 minutes. Angel had found him sitting on the floor, clutching a tiny onesie in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. That was the last time either of them mentioned the nursery. In the weeks following the funeral, Angel felt herself slipping further away from the person she used to be. She stopped answering her phone, stopped responding to messages from friends and family who were trying to offer their condolences. She didn't want their sympathy. She didn't want their words. Because no words could fix this. No words could bring her babies back. Nick tried. He tried so hard. He made sure she ate, even if it was just a few bites. He held her at night, even when she didn't respond to his touch. He sat beside her, even when she stared past him, lost in a world of memories that now felt more like a nightmare. But grief has a way of isolating people, even those who love each other. One evening, 3 weeks after the funeral, Nick found her sitting by the bedroom window, still wearing the same pajamas from the day before. The soft glow of the setting sun bathed her in golden light, but she looked almost ghostly, like she was there and yet not really there at all. "Angel," he said quietly, kneeling in front of her. "You need to eat something." She didn't respond. "Please," he tried again, his voice thick with emotion. "I know you're hurting, but you have to take care of yourself." Slowly, she turned to look at him. Her eyes were hollow, dark circles marring the soft skin beneath them. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "For what?" Nick's breath caught in his throat. "For me," he said immediately, his hands gripping hers tightly. "For us. We're still here." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't want to be." His whole body tensed. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Flat, emotionless, like she had already decided that nothing in this world mattered anymore. Nick wasn't an emotional man. He was logical, rational, but in that moment, something inside him broke. "I can't lose you too," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, Angel, please don't give up on us." She didn't answer, but later that evening, she ate half a bowl of soup. It wasn't much, but it was something. The world keeps moving, even when you can't. Time blurred together after that. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The pain didn't fade, but it became something else. Something heavier, something they carried with them, rather than drowning in it. Angel started seeing a therapist. It was Nick's idea, though she had resisted at first. Talking about her pain felt exhausting. She didn't want to share it with anyone. But Dr. Holloway was patient. He didn't push her to talk about Blake and Annabelle right away. Instead, he asked her simple things. "How are you sleeping?" "Not well." "Are you eating?" "Sometimes." "Are you angry?" That question had made her pause. She hadn't thought about it before. She had felt sadness. She had felt emptiness. But anger? No. At least she didn't think so. But as the weeks went on, she started to notice the rage simmering beneath her skin. She was angry at her body for failing her, angry at the doctors for not being able to save her babies, angry at the world for moving on while she was still stuck in the same moment. The same loss, the same never-ending grief. One evening, she found herself standing in the nursery doorway, staring inside. She hadn't stepped foot in that room since they lost the twins. But something inside her, maybe anger, maybe exhaustion, maybe just the need to feel something other than empty, made her walk inside. She picked up one of Annabelle's tiny dresses, still hanging neatly in the closet. She ran her fingers over the soft fabric, remembering how she had imagined dressing her daughter in it one day. And then, without thinking, she threw it across the room. The small garment barely made a sound as it hit the floor. But it didn't matter, because suddenly she was sobbing. Not quiet tears, not silent grief. Loud, gut-wrenching so, bees that shook her whole body. Nick found her there, kneeling on the floor, surrounded by the tiny clothes and blankets she had started pulling from the drawers. He didn't say anything. He just sat down beside her and pulled her into his arms. For the first time in months, she didn't pull away. She clung to him, crying into his chest, and for the first time, she felt something other than numb. She felt alive. A step forward, no matter how small. The healing didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a week or a month. But something changed that night in the nursery. Angel started talking more. Not a lot, but enough that Nick noticed. She started going outside. Just short walks at first, but enough to remind her that the world still existed beyond their grief. She even started reading again, something she had once loved but hadn't touched since the loss. And one day, without really thinking about it, she said something to Nick that surprised them both. "I want to try again." He froze, staring at her. "Are you sure?" "No," she admitted. "But I think I want to hope again." Nick reached for her hand. "Then we'll hope together." For the first time in a long time, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't the carefree, joyful expression she used to have. But it was something. And for now, something was enough. Learning to hope again. Grief doesn't disappear. It settles into you, becomes a part of who you are. Some days, it's a whisper in the back of your mind. Other days, it's a weight so heavy you feel like you can't breathe. Angel Carter had learned to live with it, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Losing Blake and Annabelle had taken everything from her. The light in her eyes, the warmth in her voice, the laughter she used to share with Nick. For months, she had lived in a state of numbness, a place where time passed, but nothing truly moved forward. But then, something changed. It wasn't a grand realization. It wasn't a sudden burst of strength. It was something much smaller, much quieter. It was the simple act of whispering to herself, "I want to hope again," a decision that changed everything. When Angel first told Nick that she wanted to try again, she wasn't sure if she meant it. She was terrified. Terrified of the possibility of another pregnancy, another loss. Terrified that if she dared to dream again, the universe would take it away just like it had before. But Nick hadn't pressured her. He had simply held her hand and said, "Then we'll hope together." For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. They decided to take it slow. Angel started focusing on her health, not just physically, but mentally. She continued therapy, even on the days she wanted to cancel. She forced herself to eat, to take care of her body in a way she hadn't in months. She started walking in the mornings, letting the sun warm her skin, reminding herself that the world was still there. And then, one day, she woke up and realized she was ready. "I want to try," she told Nick over breakfast one morning. "For real this time." Nick put his coffee down, searching her face for any doubt. "Are you sure?" She nodded. I think I need to do this." The second chance. Trying again wasn't easy. Every doctor's appointment was filled with anxiety. Every symptom, every cramp, every flutter in her stomach sent a wave of fear through her. But there was also something else. Hope. At 8 weeks, they saw the heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. A tiny, flickering light, a heartbeat so small yet so powerful. Angel let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Nick squeezed her hand. "It's strong," he whispered, his voice filled with something she hadn't heard in a long time. Genuine happiness. She closed her eyes and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. The fear that never left. As the weeks passed, the pregnancy progressed smoothly, but Angel never truly relaxed. Every doctor's appointment was filled with questions. Is the baby okay? Is my cervix holding? Is there anything wrong? Dr. Patel, who had been with them through everything, was patient with her concerns. Your cervix is holding steady, he assured her at 16 weeks. But given your history, we'll take every precaution. That meant extra monitoring. Bed rest earlier than usual. Strict guidelines on what she could and couldn't do. And still, the fear never left her. Nick saw it in her eyes every time. She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "Talk to me," he said one evening as they lay in bed. She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared." "I know," he said. "Me too." She swallowed hard. "What if we lose this baby too?" Nick didn't hesitate. "Then we'll survive. Together." She wanted to believe that. She really did. A heartbeat, that meant everything. At 20 weeks, they had the anatomy scan, the same scan where, last time, everything had gone wrong. Angel barely breathed as the ultrasound technician moved the probe over her stomach. She studied the screen, waiting for something, anything, that might indicate something was wrong. But then, the technician smiled. "Everything looks great," she said. "Strong heartbeat, healthy baby." Angel let out a shaky breath. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. "Do you want to know the gender?" the technician asked. Nick glanced at Angel, waiting for her answer. She hesitated. She hadn't been sure if she wanted to know. Part of her was afraid to get too attached. Afraid that if she gave this baby a name, a place in her heart, the universe would take it away just like before. But then she realized something. She already loved this baby. She had loved this baby from the moment she saw that tiny heartbeat on the screen. "Yes," she whispered. "We want to know." The technician turned the screen slightly. "Congratulations. It's a girl." Angel's hands flew to her mouth. "A girl." Nick laughed, a sound that felt foreign but so welcome. "A girl," he repeated, as if trying to make it real. Angel felt her heart swell. Annabelle had been a girl, and now the universe was giving her another chance. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if this baby would make it, if everything would go according to plan. But for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe, to hope. And that was enough. A future worth fighting for. Hope is a fragile thing. It grows slowly, cautiously, like a flower pushing through cracks in the pavement. But once it takes root, once it finds even the smallest bit of light, it refuses to be ignored. Angel Carter had spent months living in fear, clinging to hope with trembling hands. Every doctor's appointment, every passing week, was a battle between anxiety and belief. She had lost so much before, too much. But this time, she was determined to hold on. Her pregnancy progressed cautiously but steadily. The bed rest was difficult, but Nick made it easier. He was there through it all, bringing her meals, holding her through the nights when nightmares crept in, reminding her that they weren't alone in this fight. As the weeks turned into months, something changed in Angel. She stopped waiting for the worst to happen. She stopped living in the shadow of her past losses. She started looking forward, the day that changed everything. At 37 weeks, Angel woke up to a familiar sharp pain in her abdomen. For a moment, panic gripped her. Memories of Blake and Annabelle's premature birth flooded her mind. The fear of loss, of helplessness, of watching life slip away before it even had a chance to begin. But this time, it was different. This time, it wasn't too soon. This time, she was ready. "Nick," she whispered, nudging him awake. "It's happening." His eyes flew open, filled with alarm. "Are you sure?" She nodded, breathing through another contraction. "I think it's time." Nick had planned everything meticulously, down to the fastest route to the hospital. But all his careful preparation disappeared the moment reality hit. He fumbled with the car keys, nearly forgot the hospital bag, and kept glancing at Angel as if he expected her to vanish. She laughed between contractions. "Relax. We've got time." But they both knew time had never felt more precious. A cry that meant everything. Labor was long, exhausting, but Angel fought through every moment, through every wave of pain, through every fear that threatened to creep back in. And then, after hours of effort, it happened. A cry. A strong, beautiful, heart-stopping cry filled the hospital room. Angel gasped, her heart nearly giving out as she looked at the tiny, squirming life in the doctor's hands. A baby girl. Her baby girl. Tears streamed down her face as the nurse placed the newborn against her chest. Warm, perfect, breathing, alive. Nick stood beside her, his hand shaking as he touched the baby's tiny fingers. "She's here," he whispered, almost in disbelief. "She's really here." Angel pressed her lips to her daughter's soft forehead. "We did it," she whispered. "We made it." Choosing the right name. Later that night, as Angel held her daughter close, Nick sat beside her, exhaustion and relief washing over them both. "We need a name," he murmured, stroking the baby's tiny hand. Angel had thought about this moment for months. She had gone through lists, whispered names to herself in the quiet of the night, searching for the one that felt right. And now, looking into her daughter's sleepy eyes, she knew. "Hope," she said softly. Nick blinked. "Hope." She nodded, smiling through her tears. "Because that's what she is, Nick. She's hope." Hope had saved Angel when she thought she had nothing left. It had carried her through the darkest moments of her life. And now, it lay in her arms, wrapped in a tiny hospital blanket, breathing softly against her chest. Nick leaned over, kissing both of them. "Hope Carter," he whispered. "It's perfect." The love that never left. Bringing Hope home was surreal. The nursery, once filled with sorrow, now had a new energy. The rocking chair, the tiny clothes, the soft lullabies, everything was the same, yet everything was different. One evening, as Angel rocked Hope to sleep, she felt something stir deep inside her. A presence. A warmth. Maybe it was just a memory. Maybe it was just grief settling into a more peaceful place. Or maybe, just maybe, Blake and Annabelle had never truly left. Maybe they had been with her all along, guiding her, protecting her, making sure their little sister made it safely into the world. Angel smiled softly, pressing a kiss to Hope's forehead. "Thank you," she whispered, to the one she lost, to the universe, to whatever force had allowed her to hold love in her arms again. Hope stirred, sighing contentedly in her sleep. And for the first time in a long, long time, Angel knew she was going to be okay. She had found her way back. And this time, love was here to stay. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.